Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. We are super excited to be back. My name is Minna. I'll be your host of the session, and I'm thrilled to be bringing this webinar series live together with you with Practical CSM. We are now kicking off our new series, which will be called How to Build. Today is our first episode on that theme, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our topic in a minute. We are going to be featuring expert guests from the CS world, one of them being here today already with you. And in the rest of the series, we'll be tackling the hot topics that we see on LinkedIn being discussed today, such as automation, data and metrics. One crowd favorite may be AI for customer success. And then we necessarily need to be bringing you some topics that are not so discussed as such as today's one, how to build a great CS training strategy. And for that, we have our expert guest today, the one and only Rick Adams. Now, I know for most of you, he will need no introductions, but I will obviously ask him a little bit to share with us. So we will be obviously chatting with Rick right now, but please do join in the conversation, ask your questions in the chat. We'll bring those through to our conversation. We also got a quick banner up in a second to start the conversation there to describe your CS training strategy with one word. We want to understand what you're thinking right now and what you will be thinking after this session. So without further ado, Rick, welcome to the series. And I'm so excited to be on this side of the table now interviewing you, because you've always been the host of all of this wonderful series. So could you just tell us 60-second elevator speech on who you are in this customer success world?
Yes, of course. And thank you very much, Minna. It's great to see you and great to be here. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Rick Adams. I am the author of Practical Customer Success Management. I'm also the author of the training on LinkedIn that roughly 100,000 people have now been through. And of course, I'm the ex-CEO at Practical CSM, which brings you customer success training, certification, online self-study, and continuing professional development. And I now have my own sort of consultancy coaching business called Adams Success. And that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. So obviously you are an expert in the CS strategy, training strategy world, and having built a number of courses. So I'm going to kick off with an easy one for you. Why do you think training in customer success is important? And the counterpoint to that is, what happens if you don't do it well?
Okay, so why do I think training is important? Well, if you don't train, then of course you have your starting point, whatever that might be, which actually in customer success management is often very low in terms of customer success management best practice, because a lot of people get pulled from other departments and other teams, and they do not have any idea what makes a good customer success manager specifically. So in terms of customer success best practice, if you don't train people, they probably won't know it. And the other thing about training, of course, is you do only have what you've already got unless you continue to learn. Now, you can learn on the job, and that's informal training, and it can just happen by accident, of course, anyway, as a happy circumstance of doing your work. And that's great. But I would suggest that as a good manager, we don't leave it to happenstance, and we make sure that people are training and learning the things we want them to learn.
In the right way, right? And consistently, I think, is another key word that we would probably be talking about today more.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you move now to if you asked, well, what's important about a customer success training strategy, you know, what should go into that, then absolutely all that you've just said is so very true, Minna. We don't want to just throw things at the team in a random order. We need to think about it, and that's what a strategy allows us to do. The point of building a strategy, it's a plan, right? And as that old adage goes, which I hope I'll get right, is you either if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So have I got that right? I think I did.
I think that's the right way, yeah.
So same here, and the same way. Any complex project, anything that's got bits to it, write down a plan. It's why we say to our CSMs, go and deliver customer success plans to our customers. We want to get the most value out of our products and services. Well, similarly, we want a customer success plan where the customer is our CSM, and the plan is to get them knowledgeable and skilled and efficient and productive. And that, again, how are we going to do that if we don't actually sit down and do it properly? So you're right. We want a consistent approach across the board. So all our CSMs are delivering the same thing in the same style and the same way to all our clients. We want to align the team in terms of what our company goals are. So they're doing the things that actually we want them to do, rather than the things that might be good, but they're not actually leading to the outcomes that we are specifically looking for as a company. That we understand what our clients really need, where the gaps are currently, and that we're plugging those gaps with the training, so that we're actually then delivering the most rounded and best possible service. We want to think about how we hire new hires. So we want in our strategy to be able to have something that makes that ramp up from a new hire as speedy as possible, and as efficient and as effective as possible, accelerates their time to value. We want to think about the CSM themselves. We want to think about how we want to help them to be not just competent, but also confident about what they do, and feel like they're in charge and in control, and actually be in charge and be in control, to be able to do the best they can, build those strong relationships with clients, and do their work very well. And also, of course, we can audit our team. We can see what the gaps are, and we can put those into the strategy to plug them, so that we can customize our strategy to meet our current what we've got, and, as I said, the goals of the company, where we're headed.
Right, lots of great stuff there. We will dig into a lot more of that in the next, but let's kind of get down to the how-to. So if you're starting from scratch, Rick, what are kind of the key components that you would start to build this puzzle with in your effective CS training strategy?
Okay, well, you as you said earlier, I mean, or we said, both of us, is strategy is so important here. Before you go blundering in and doing things, write down a plan. And also, by the way, I would suggest for customer success leaders is you need a budget for this, and it can be one of the things that is forgotten. And I believe that, of course, one of the jobs, a very important job of a customer success leader, is to support their team, but it is also to advocate to the rest of the business for their team. So they are the ones that push to the rest of the team what the needs are of their department, and go out and get them. So you've got to, sometimes you've got to work quite hard and fight for those, and that includes a training budget. So I think that one of the things to consider here is build a business plan, because the people that you're going to be going to asking for money are going to be saying, well, what do we get back? So just going and asking, well, can I have 20,000 or 50,000 or 500,000 or whatever size team you've got, as relevant as a training budget, is only the painful half of the equation for them. What you want to be saying to them is, and this is what you're going to get back, because we're going to be more productive, we're going to be more efficient, and therefore we can help to achieve the ROI figures that you're looking to. And you want to sort of try and make that as real as possible, and give some use cases of how exactly that's going to work, and how you're going to measure it, how you're going to show what the return is going to be. So you need to think about that. Now, of course, you can't just do that until you've done a few other things as well. So you need to do a little bit of research and find out, well, what is my company trying to achieve? What direction are we going in? Are we trying, is it the most important thing is to retain our existing customers? Are we trying to grow new business? Are we trying to grow business from existing customers? Are those three equally important? Is there something else? So whatever it is, we need to know, what is it that my business wants from us in customer success? And then let's go and think about, well, what do we need if we're going to deliver that? And then we can say, right, let's audit what we're good at and what we're not good at, and see what the gaps are. So we want to know what the ideal situation is and what the current situation is, and do the gap analysis, which then tells us what we need in terms of training. And then from there, we can build a budget, and then we can build the business case and go and secure the money. So that, to me, is kind of the top level approach as a starting point, anyway. So I don't know how you want to carry it on from there, Minna.
Well, if I was putting that into HR language, that sounds like the needs analysis, which is very typical in, buying needs for HR people, right? So if you're going to go and advocate that with your HR leaders.
Not just HR, absolutely anywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say there is also a piece on, as you started the conversation, that the need for this tends to be from the fact that the CS leaders, CS people usually don't come from an existing role. They probably need to be trained, and especially in hyper growth organizations, there can be various levels of CS. So how would you consider also the needs of the individual into this plan?
Well, that's a great point. So I see there being 4 sort of tranches of learning area, or four sort of pillars of knowledge and skill and expertise that any good customer success manager needs. So the first one is industry. And what I mean is customer industry. You've got to understand your customer. Okay. So if you hire, if you're selling, I don't know, financial software, then you want your CSMs to understand the financial world, and to be able to walk into like a firm of accountants or whatever's relevant, and be able to talk in their language about the things that interest and concern them, and understand their answers. Because otherwise the client rolls their eyes and has to explain the very basics, and they don't like that. Okay, they want someone who gets it and understands and talks their language, and and has walked a mile in their shoes. So I would say that's one aspect that we need to make sure that we've got. And I think that I would strongly recommend generally that we hire for that, because it's a lot easier because that, how do you teach that in a 2-month training program? Very difficult, but it's something you learn over the years of being in that industry, right? So hire from the finance industry in the first place if you possibly can. So if it was finance, for example, or whatever it happens to be. So that's the first one, is the industry. The second thing is your product. So they don't have to be technical product experts like perhaps support or like an implementation engineer might be, but they do have to have a good, solid, reasonably technical understanding of your product range. Products and services, I'm just putting under the banner product here.
Yes.
And so they need to know which products to recommend for which problems to solve, and which functions of those products might be useful to which people to do what. And that's the minimum that they need. So again, that's the bit. I mean, the client is already an expert in their industry. They just want you to talk their language, but you're not adding anything. Okay, they already know that. The bit you add then is your product stuff, because they don't know your products until later on when they bought it and you've been using it for 5 years. And right now they need to know, well, how do I get the best out of product X? Well, you need to know that. So the most obvious piece of training that we need to deliver, product training. Okay, so you've got to find enough of that. And I know, again, you've got to think about not just as a one-off, of course, but your product is going to develop, particularly if you're in SaaS, your product probably changes every week. So your customer success managers need to keep on top of the .x upgrades and the new features and functions as they're added, and so on and so forth. So that's 2 of the pillars. So the next 2 pillars are equally important, but are more forgotten. So the next one is customer success management best practice. So what I mean by that is, well, what do you do as a CSM, as opposed to as an account manager or a support professional? What do you do? So you need to know the correct, best, most productive, most effective, most efficient things and activities to do, and when to do them, and in what order to do them, to be a CSM. And of course, this is where a company like Practical CSM, that I formed and handed over on to with the self-study training, etc., that's exactly the focus of that, is on the best practice of customer success management itself. So it takes you through the best practices for welcoming a new client and onboarding them, and then the value realization and the advocacy and the upselling and cross-selling and retention and all of these things, and the measurements and so on. So all of that's customer success management best practice. That's the third pillar. Equally important, and as you said, Minna, and I agree with you, that's the one probably they don't know coming into the role.
Right.
Because why would they? If they were in technical support, why would they? And then the fourth one is personal skills. So are you a self-starter? Are you self-disciplined? Are you good at getting on with people? Can you form trust relationships? Can you influence people? Are you a good teacher and trainer? Are you mature and patient with people regardless of what they're like, i.e. a high emotional intelligence? Are you self-disciplined? I might have said that one. There's just dozens and dozens of like personal skills that are so useful, and because of course this is a customer facing role, which means that you've got all of those customer facing skills, but it's also a technical role. So what do you like at data analysis? What do you like at report writing? What do you like at storytelling? There's just hundreds of them. So again, that is a never-ending source of things that you can improve your CSM team by helping them to become better in their personal skills. And those are the four aspects, and they are, four areas that I would, as it were, equally make sure my team were at a good level, and then on an ongoing basis looking to increase that level as we move forwards.
There's a lot of there. So let me just recap that one more time for everyone. So you mentioned industry training, which we kind of can hire for or train in, product training, and particularly I would like to call out not just how you use something, but why you use it, right? What's the solution actually helping the people, and that's usually
what the end result is from a business outcome perspective. Now you've mentioned that, I would totally agree with what you're saying. So yes,
there we go. Exactly. And then third, the perspective is as in what do you do and how you do it. And then the fourth big one, which I think often enough is forgotten in any role, is your personal skills, and how you, especially in this role because you relate to customers so much, how do you get that? So I was going to ask you a question of how does this link with the cross-functional training, but if I really listen to what you said, there is pieces of that you have to work with the product, and there's pieces that you have to work with the sales there, right? And potentially with marketing. How would you link the other departments with your CS training plan? What's your thinking on that, Rick?
Okay, yeah, great question. Well, look, I mean, you're right. When it comes to the product training, of course, we're going to be relying on the people who know the product to help us to develop that training. Now, it depends on the size of the company, right? Because like a large organization is going to have a training department or a training person in HR. Okay, and so they are going to take a lot of the weight off, and they will already be working with product to develop product training to dissemble and deliver to the rest of customer facing people, including product support, not just customer success managers. Now if you don't have that luxury, then of course you need to DIY it, and you need to go to the product managers and say, look, I need to upskill my teams. How am I going to do this? And not just as a one-off, but on an ongoing regular basis. So how can we not just now connect, but maintain a connection on an ongoing basis, so that we are always learning as soon as, or even before it becomes available, we're upskilling ourselves so we're ready to deliver this new information to the clients. So you're absolutely right. Product absolutely is important. Now, you also mentioned the more sort of sales and account management side of things. So these are important too, because effectively we're collaborating with these guys. We go together as a combined effort to upsell, cross-sell, and retain our clients with sales and account management. So we don't want to be giving two different messages. So the first thing I would be saying is we need to align on messaging and what's important and what isn't, and what and how we explain, the language we use. Why confuse the clients when I'm using like one word and you're using another, and we're both talking to the client? That's confusing to the client. So even something as simple as language, we need to be training the client, say, well, we call that this. Or even like a simple like a client. Are they a client or a customer? Let's decide.
Exactly.
Something as simple as that. So that's very important. So we're aligning and collaborating with sales and with particularly, of course, account management. And then marketing is really important as well, because the marketing, again, they're delivering the messaging. They are in charge of what messaging we want to deliver. So again, we need to know that, because that helps us to align, but also then the way in which the marketing messages are going to be delivered. And again, we need to be supportive of that as well. So I would say yes to marketing, to sales, to account management, and to product. And I would also say we could be talking to the technical support, product support guys as well, and learning from them what are the client's needs, frustrations, issues, challenges. What are they constantly saying? How do I right? Because that's reactive. Wouldn't it be better if, taking it into customer success, we proactively show them in the first place how to do that, and then they don't have to get frustrated about it and go to technical support to learn how to do it when they need to do it, and it's slowing them down because we've already taught them. So I think, again, we need to work with the technical support, with the reactive guys, to see, well, what can we turn into proactive, maybe within the onboarding and welcome kit and all of that process. Maybe we can produce something that's going to help them.
Yeah. So the side of things, there is a lot of overlap between, the training plan as well as operational plan, because obviously it's gonna have to be an ongoing thing. So that kind of leads me to ask you a question around this retention of knowledge, because obviously we all know we have about a memory space of about goldfish these days. So how would you make sure that the training is sticky and it lives and they can apply what they learn? Do you have some good tips for the audience on that?
It's such a great point, because I think we've all been guilty of attending training courses and then getting a massive book or whatever course paperwork, and then putting it in a drawer and never looking at it again, and just going straight back next day to whatever it was that we were doing before, and doing exactly the same thing as we've always done. So I think the first way of stopping or trying to prevent that, or mitigating as much as possible, is, of course, to make sure, having done that audit that we talked about, the needs analysis as you described it, the gap analysis that I would call it, and we're actually then delivering training that really provides plugs to real gaps, because they're going to use it. So if they can see how, oh, that's great, I've never known how to do that, I'm always asked to do it, now I've got a way of dealing with it, well, then we know we've done a good job, and we know that they are likely to use that. So the first thing is make it relevant. Okay, make sure that you explain that it's relevant. Now, the second thing is, I think we're all hesitant to use something that we're not 100% comfortable with live with a client, because who knows what might happen. We might end up looking foolish. So this is where, don't just a lecture is good, but like a case study based exercise where they actually role play it, do it, and then come together and discuss how it went and learn lessons from it is even better. So by all means, of course, we've still got to explain the theory. That's very important. They've got to understand it, but then actually being able to try it in a comfortable, doesn't matter environment in a training course where there's nothing to lose, and you can make a fool of yourself because we're all friends here, and we'll laugh at you, but only in a friendly way. Whereas with a client, it's that could be disastrous. Here, it doesn't matter what you do. So it gives them that ability to try it, and then that in turn hopefully gives them confidence to actually then try it in real life when they go back. So I would say that's number two. And then the third thing, I think, is to not just do a one-off sheepdip, right, you've had your year's training, now you've done it, go and do it now. Instead, deliver like a standalone training or a one-off training or whatever, a decent sized piece of training, but then offer some shorter coaching availability afterwards. Now, it could be formal through like a coach like me, or it could be you, the team leader, doing that, because obviously budgets may not allow for bringing someone else in. But the point is, you bring your team back a week later and you say to them, okay, so what have we learned? What are you now applying? What have you not applied, and why? Okay,
Yes.
and you help them then to apply that. And I would continue that. In fact, ideally, ad infinitum, because this is ongoing, continuing professional development. It says continuing at the beginning of CPD, right? So it should be an ongoing process, and that's how we're going to get the best of it. And then finally, rather than have a 300-page detailed catalogue of notes, which could be handy, but for most people they'll never look at again because no one's got the time. Maybe it would be good to produce some very highly summarized 2 or 3 sheet type crib notes that are going to be something they can put in front of them when they're on the phone or on a webinar, and it's just very, very easy for them as a playbook just to get the very, very broad bullet points and to go through almost like a checklist. Have I said that? Have we covered this? Have I made sure I understand that? Have I noted this? Without any more detail, perhaps, than that. I think that's very handy because, like you said, people can't remember unless they have something necessarily, something to prompt them a little bit.
And practice with. And I'm pretty sure there's tools today in this landscape of AI kind of to help you to say, this is what your call could look like, and create your call summaries and incorporate some of these learning tips in there.
Well, that's a great idea. Yeah. And AI is fantastic. AI does everything, I mean, just go on to ChatGPT and say, right, imagine you're my client, you are a financial company, you're an accountant, and I'm coming in, you've bought my software, and I'm coming in to welcome you because you've just bought it and to help you understand it. So I'm going to be asking you, it'll play along.
Yes, do a whole conversation. I mean, I've seen sales practice for sure with AI, this kind of scenario role-playing things. So so let's just recap that one more time. So needs to be relevant, needs to be embedded. When we talk about that in HR language, it's kind of the 80-20, the 10, right? Like, learning, but then 20% at least on the job and 10% kind of only formally. And then, it needs to be something that is consistent and cadence within your training plan. Did I get that right, Rick?
Yeah, and also be realistic. You want to make them as good as possible, but of course you are taking them away from their business. And if you give them self-study work to do, but don't give them any time to do it in, don't expect them to do it. They won't. You will find after 6 months you've paid for it and they haven't done it. So you need to make sure that they have appropriate time and that you're supporting them and encouraging them. And by the way, if you want someone to do something, then you need to motivate, reward, incentivize. So so make sure you're rewarding the things that you want your CSMs to do, whatever they may be, including training, but not just limited to training either.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to run out of time soon, Rick, but there's lots to consider on here. Obviously, one thing that for us, we started talking about the budget and the measurements, because that's one great way of trying to prove your business case. So what kind of things would you say are helpful in terms of your training budget, in terms of data and metrics to measure that training effectiveness? What kind of things would you advise our CS leaders to start thinking about in that relation?
Well, check out the recent webinar that we delivered last week on revenue, because there was actually a section in that on measurements. And obviously that's general revenue measurements, general measurements for customer success. We're talking about training here, but actually they're very, very useful as well, because I'm going to say that in terms of lagging indicators, i.e., the ultimate measurement of this is, do revenues go up because of it? Okay. Right. So that's what you want to measure. The only problem is you won't know that for like 12 months or because they've got to do it, right? They've got to, first of all, they've got to go to that client, and they might not be going to that client for 3 months. Then they've got to have that conversation with the client that's different to the one they've had before. Then the client's got to be seeing things in a different light. Then they've got to do things differently because of what we've taught them to do. Then they've got to see the reward, and then they've got to come back and we want more of this. That's a 12-month period before you actually get like a revenue from a piece of training. Yeah. Right. So don't expect the revenues to go up tomorrow because you did training last week. But that's the ultimate what we want to be testing for. So what can you do as a leading indicator more quickly to sort of tell your C-level execs, now I think this is working? Well, I would say make it more activity based. So what is your team doing differently?
Right, what the behavior is changing.
Well, yeah. What were they only, for example, were they only offering 5 to 10% of all of your clients a success planning session, and you're now offering 90% of your clients a customer success plan session? Yeah, that's a huge win potentially. Okay, or you could also measure the take up, obviously. So your own activity, your team's activity. That was just one example of. Yeah, there's all the other activities as well, but that's one example. Now, also, what about the activity of your clients as well? Have they started doing things differently? So, for example, take up of a feature. So now that we've trained them in how important it is to explain to the clients how important it is that they use feature X, are they using feature X? So that would be, or again, like support calls, has the number of frustrated, I can't get feature X to work because I don't know how it works. This is slowing me down. Yeah, I'm really angry. Have those gone down because we've proactively dealt with that sort of stuff? So that's another way. So not just our activity, but also, how's that viewing in terms of what the client is doing as well, and of course sentiment from the client as well. So we could look at net promoter score and just simple CSAT as well to see, to measure, how well are we doing, how much value is our customer success delivering for you, and see if that is going up as well.
No, I think there's a great piece there around internal behavior and external behavior. How is that both changing, and what's your baseline? Because also, if you don't know where you're starting, then how do you do your improvements? So
right. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. So measuring what you're doing now is really powerful, but measuring it against the yardstick, as you said, of the baseline of what you're doing beforehand gives you an indication of direction. You can't have a direction with a single point. You can only have a direction once you've got 2 points, and then you can draw a line. And of course, the nice thing is you can extend the line and begin to have a feel for how the future might look as well. So great point. I totally agree with you.
Especially assessing how many more people you get through your training plan and their cadence as well. Right. Can you do some A/B testing on that? Our typical love of CS metrics going on there. We obviously love your questions. We're really hoping that those people that said their training strategies are inadequate or immature, or potentially at its very starting point, let's call it that, have taken something away from you. So if you were to tell a CS leader who is currently thinking, oh my God, where do I start? Because I think my training strategy is not there. What's the first step you would tell Rick for them to take?
We covered it towards the beginning, but to remind people, the start point is begin with the end in mind. What Stephen R. Covey, chapter 3 of his book, and what's the end? The end result is a better quality, more effective customer success team. And effective means to me 2 things. It means productive and efficient. You need to be doing the right things and doing them quickly, so you can do a lot of them. So you need to be able to work out that what is effective. You need to find out what would make my customer success team deliver the most value to my company. Then you can do what we were talking about earlier, Minna, is we can do an audit or an analysis of our current capabilities to see, well, what are we currently good at? And then that's that gap analysis, the audit. What did you call it? Something slightly different, but very similar.
Analysis, right?
Yeah. And we can see what the difference is. And then that's the thing to put in the plan is the things that are going to most quickly plug those gaps and get your team up to a reasonable standard. And then, as I said, you need to cost that to a degree. You need to put it into a business plan, wrap it up with some, this is what it'll cost, but this is what we'll get back and how we're going to measure it. Think about measurements and submit that to your team and fight for a budget. And once you've got the budget, it's downhill all the way, right? It's sort of the hard bit's getting the budget. And then the easy bit is spending. I mean, spending the money is always easy, right? I mean, that's easily done. But make sure, as I said, that you're realistic in terms of the time that you're going to give your team. How are they going to do this? They're already at 120% capacity. You can't do training. You're going to need to think about that. If you need to think, well, what's going to give and where in the day are they going to be doing this and how are we going to deal with that? And then the ongoing support, as you rightly said, there's no point in doing like point training and then them forgetting it and going back to what they're doing because they're too busy. We need to make sure, again, we do the ongoing coaching, we do the rewarding, the incentivizing, we make the changes. And it's up to us. Do not expect your team to do it. That is the team leader's role.
Yeah, enablement, right? Enabling them to be able to benefit from that.
Enablement, empowerment, and incentivization. And to an extent also, carrot and stick. So, and those who have not done X by date Y need to come and see me and tell me why. And if they haven't got a good reason, I'm not going to be happy. I mean, obviously, if you've got a good reason, if you've been ill or whatever, well, fine. You need a good reason why this has not happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's ultimate ways of incentivizing that. Brilliant. We've got a question from the audience saying, how do you train your customer success staff to build their connections inside accounts to find expansion opportunities? So if I was to reword that, I'm thinking, stakeholder mapping. So I guess that could be part of these, when you mentioned best practices, what do you do and how do you do it, Rick?
Yes, this comes under pillar 3, customer success management best practices. My trite and completely unuseful answer is go on a customer success training course, which of course is useless here. My 20 to 30 second answer on that one, which is almost as pointless as well, but it's all we've got, is, as you said, you've got to work out who you want to speak to, and then talk to the people that you do know in the client already and ask them for a reference to the person you want to meet. But ask them in a way where they see the value to their company and to them of giving you that reference. So they're not giving it because you want it. They're actually giving it because it's a good, useful thing. And you've shown them why it's the right thing for them to do to introduce you to person X. So that's my very, very short sort of answer on that one.
Yep, and there's plenty of stakeholder mapping resources in terms of how you build that into your plan as well. Because yes, absolutely, it's one of key things for CSM.
It's actually one of the things we're so often told to do. Ever since, I started in sales when I was 20, and I remember my manager standing up in front of everybody. In fact, it wasn't my manager, it was my manager's manager, regional manager, come in and give us all a lecture. You're not talking to enough C-level executives. I want you to go out there and I want you to, but they didn't tell us how.
So this plan is meant to prevent you also from doing that and telling you how, right?
Absolutely.
So brilliant. We'd love to obviously keep getting questions from the audience, but I'll throw you one more at you, Rick. And I guess the question, what I would love you to answer is, what is the most practical training you've ever given in terms of things that can be easily implemented into an organization?
Gosh, you've put me on the spot with that one. We should give me time to prepare for that. After years and years of training, there's so many things. I think I would generally say that you get a lot of kickback at the beginning of a training course, or I have had a lot of kickback at the beginning of a training course, particularly with older people and particularly with men, on role playing. They don't like it. It's embarrassing. I recall someone coming in and like sitting at the back of the room, and like before we started, he said to me, and by the way, I'm not going to be participating in any role playing, so don't even think about it. And I said to him, well, here's the door, you're welcome to leave. And that because otherwise, I wasn't going to position myself as being in authority in that room if I didn't. It was done in a jocular fashion, but I meant it too. And actually, the reason I'm saying that is because it is the thing that most people don't want to do. But I would say it is one of the really powerful ways of learning, is by trying it out in the classroom. With a carefully constructed exercise that allows you to, that is perhaps customized to exactly the situations you and your teams with your clients get yourselves into, or they force upon you, and you actually have to then act it out and learn from it and discuss it and maybe go back and do it again. I think so. I would say that in general, it's that would be the most powerful thing, or one of the most powerful things.
Brilliant. I know we're probably out of time. Thank you everyone who's joined us, or if you're watching this on demand, thank you for tuning in. Rick, one quick key takeaway for everyone.
Yeah, don't leave it to chance. Don't just do it randomly either. Create a plan, follow the plan, measure what happens, and then you will get the results you want.
Thank you. That's a gold nugget right there. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and keep us posted on how you're getting on with your training plans. We'd love to hear from you. Take care now.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.